Okay. So today my lesson is going to be about governmental institutions, and then a quick lesson overview over what we're going to focus on and talk about today. Um, we're going to learn about the different government institutions that are used around the world. So we're going to focus on democracies, republics, the two different types of monarchies, and then authoritarian and dictatorship governments. And we just want to think about the relationship that some of these government systems might have. So is there a relationship between democracies and republics? Is there a relationship between monarchies and democracies? Just stuff like that, realizing the connections between these things. And then next, we're going to talk about why does it matter what government institutions are being used? So in certain government institutions, is the will of the people going to be more freely instituted in democracies? Are the people going to have more say in authoritarian or dictatorship governments? Or certain groups of people going to have less say? Is everyone going to adhere to the same law in these governments? Just stuff to think about. And then lastly, how can we identify these forms of government around the world? So we're going to look at all the different forms of governments. We want to be able to look at the characteristics of a democracy or a republic or a dictatorship and be able to identify what it is. So for today's lesson, I'll provide some information. You might have to answer some questions, and then at the end, we'll have a Kahoot and we'll ask questions about everything we learned today. So just to start off, if you guys want to go on the slide I sent to you all, I just asked the question, what are some ways the government affects your everyday life? You can just jot down an answer in there, and then we'll talk about it after. There's no right answer to this, by the way. You can put anything. It can be super simple, it can be complex. I just want everyone to start thinking about government. Okay. Does anyone want to expand on what they said? Or
I just say like prices and like just laws are like, government has a large impact on the economy.
hmm
Food gets more expensive, food gets cheaper. That's the way the government affects it. And then laws, those are things that they create. We have to follow,
hmm
like speed limits when driving. That's all like government effects.
Yeah, Morgan, do you want to share or
I said college and prices because I feel like they kind of go together. College, I feel like for me, it's an everyday thing, and just like the price of it alone is insane and not affordable for the
hmm
average person.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, those are some of the most direct ways that government's gonna have an effect on your life. Laws you're gonna shape your whole life around. And then college and prices, those are gonna be things that are directly affected by what type of government you live in. So some government systems are gonna cover college and others don't. So those are great answers that reflect government. And then we'll just go on to the next one. It'll just be same thing, a question. You can answer whatever. There's no right answer. You just put whatever you want down. Okay. And then this time we'll just have one person share. It doesn't matter who to share their answer, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I just said like defend their like citizens' rights and like protect their lives pretty much. Like whether that be against foreign powers, maybe even themselves.
hmm Yeah, that's a great answer. And that's another thing where defend citizens' rights, it's going to be complicated. So in some forms of government, like democracies or republics, they're going to have more guaranteed rights. And then you're going to have to think about the trade-offs between the other forms of government, or do people have less rights? And that's just more stuff to think about. And then Morgan, I guess, do you want to share your answer too? Just something that you think that government should always do?
Mainly like protect their people, protect their citizens more from everything, from natural disasters, from other countries, just everything. And then food. It's kind of the same thing with like prices. The food prices are going up, which not
Hmm.
everyone can afford, which then affects their living situation. And those are your people. You need to help them.
Yeah. Yeah, your governments always should try their best to protect their people. And if they can't do
Mm.
that, and if they can't ensure that they can eat, that you could say they're failing as a government. And then now we'll just get into the lesson. We'll provide a definition of the government. So the government is the body people that constitutes the authority, rules, and laws over a group of people. And then what we're talking about today is going to be the government institution. So the structures within government created to carry these processes out. And then just kind of furthering on the purpose of government, we've already touched on it with your guys' answers and stuff. It's going to be to create order. They need to create a civil society where people can work alongside themselves and function together. Second purpose is to protect citizens. So that can be from internal conflicts, like creating laws, like we're going to touch on later, or external conflicts from other warring nations or other governments or other people. And then they're also going to provide services. So this is something that's going to vary a lot from democratic institutions to authoritarian institutions. So how they're going to provide services, is that through social welfare programs like stuff like SNAP, or are they going to provide street services, or streets going to be free? Is education going to be free? Next thing is we make laws. So that kind of has to do with creating order and protecting your citizens, uh, creating a stable society. And then the last thing is going to be sovereignty. So the ability to govern yourselves. And that's kind of all tying everything together, protecting each other, or from protecting your people from external conflict, and then creating laws and having the authority within your country to enforce these laws and make sure everyone adheres to the rules that your government has set forth. There's more stuff to think about. The relationship of power between the people and the leaders of government. So, are all people in this government system, are they all going to adhere to the same laws? Are leaders going to have more rights and protections? Is one person only going to have more rights and protections? The legitimacy of the leaders. So, were they born into power? Did they garner power through military, or were they voted in to their position of power? The law, like it kind of touched on earlier. Are they all going to follow the same laws, or certain people going to have certain rights? Is everyone going to be guaranteed rights? And then sovereignty, the autonomy and ability to control. So protect your people from outside forces, and then be able to instill your authority and your law onto your own peoples of your country. So building off that, we're going to talk about limited versus unlimited governments. So limited governments is going to be all leaders follow the laws. So there's going to be a constitution laid forth. So like the United States be the United States Constitution. It's going to guarantee all people the same rights and protections. Leaders aren't going to have special privileges or anything of that sort. We're all going to adhere to the same laws. Two, just building off that, the Constitution, there's laid out exactly what rights people have. And those rights are going to be protected. And then three, limited governments, they're going to have elections to enact their leaders. Uh, and then moving on, unlimited governments, leaders are going to have total control. There's going to be no checks, no balances to the power. The citizens are going to have fewer protections. They're not going to have as many rights guaranteed to things like freedom of speech, freedom of press, stuff like that. And they're going to stay in power through different means. They're not going to continue to be elected into power or voted into their positions of power. They're going to either hold on to it through tradition or just continue to enforce the rule through military means, stuff like that. In the first form, we're going to talk about a government is a limited government, so that's going to be a republic, otherwise known as a representative democracy. And this is a form of government where the people hold the power and elect representatives to create and enforce laws. So they're going to have elections to enact their leaders like in the United States, we have at the state, the local and then the national level. Um, there's going to be a distribution of powers in the United States. We have the three branches of government, the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branch, all making sure that not one area of government or not one person has too much power. And then there's going to be a constitution in all republics. So make sure that make writing exactly out what rights everyone is guaranteed, and then everyone is going to follow these same laws. And then in republics, they're going to meet the needs of people through rights and services. So kind of the United States, like we talked about, it's going to be social services, and then things like public roads, public schools are going to be provided by the federal government and state government. Yeah, and then for the example, just the United States is the example of a republic and a representative democracy. And then moving on, building on is the democracy. So we never really see direct democracy, or we don't see it as much. So it's often carried out in the forms of a republic. But an example of a direct democracy would be a form of government in which policies and laws are decided by a majority of all those eligible rather than a body of elected representatives. So does anyone want to try to guess what picture I have on that slide? If you're on it, it's on slide 9 if you can't see.
Is that Athens,
Yeah,
Greece?
that's Athens. That's like probably the most famous example of a direct democracy. Good job. And then just a question, are there any examples of direct democracy in the United States that you guys can think of? It's fine if you can. If you can, you can just put something down here in the box. Hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah. Elections are going to be an example of representative democracy. So it's when the people are voting to have a leader that represents them. So that's going to be a republic. But the most prevalent example of direct democracy in the United States is going to be like local led initiatives for to enact certain laws at like the state or local legislative level. And then like referendums, which is also going to be like local led to reverse these laws or decisions. Moving on. Uh, the next form of government we're talking about is absolute monarchy, and this is going to be an example of an unlimited government. So, an absolute monarchy is a form of government where a single ruler, typically a king or queen, holds supreme and unlimited power, unbound by laws, a constitution, or the input of the people. And for absolute monarchies, the power is going to be typically passed down through bloodline. And then on the inverse, this is kind of confusing. It might be confusing. Is going to be a constitutional monarchy, and this is going to be a form of a limited government. So a constitutional monarchy is a system where a monarch, like a king or a queen, is the head of state, but their powers are limited by a constitution. So they're going to still have democratically elected leaders, and the king or queen, the monarchy, is going to be mostly ceremonial or just a sign of tradition. So building off of that, this is the United Kingdom or England. What type of monarchy do you guys think this is? You don't have
Maybe
to
type
type, you can just answer. Sorry.
constitutional.
Yeah. So they're probably the most famous example of a constitutional monarchy. Everyone knows about the King and Queen of England, but they still have a parliament. They have their local elected leaders, and then they elect a prime minister. So they're a federal government, and then they have a constitution that lays out their powers. Most constitutional monarchies are going to be in Europe is probably a lot of Europe is going to have constitutional monarchies where they're going to have democracy, but they're still going to have the monarchies as a sign of tradition, but they're not going to hold any real political power, just mostly influence over the people indirectly. The next is Saudi Arabia. If you guys can probably guess, just yeah, it's an absolute monarchy. So most absolute monarchies are going to be found in the Middle East, where they're going to be ruled by a king or prince, and they're going to be born into power, and they're going to have absolute power and authority over their people. There's going to be no democratically elected leaders or anything of that sort. Moving on, this is going to be the next example of an unlimited government. So an authoritarian or dictatorship. The main characteristics of these types of governments, they're going to be limited freedoms. So they're not going to be people aren't going to be guaranteed as many rights or protections from their government. They're going to be more free to be oppressed by their government. And the government is going to control the media either through just state-led media. So there's the state and the government is going to be just in control of the media, or they're going to um, suppress or influence what the media says in other ways if they could say it's publicly owned. In authoritarian or dictatorship governments, there's going to be no elections at all, or there's not going to be fair elections. So if there are elections, they might threaten or kind of suppress the other electoral democratic candidates in other ways, so the elections aren't fair. And the definition of an authoritarian or dictatorship government is going to be forcing obedience to authority, especially that of the government. And then in these, the rulers are going to have absolute authority over all the people in their nation. And then the most prevalent example and like famous is going to be North Korea with Kim Jong-un, or in that family. So they're authoritarian. They have absolute control over the people and they control the media, and there's no elections or fair elections in North Korea. And then now, um, I won't, you guys don't need to click on the link, but if you just want to go to Kahoot, and then I'll open this up and we can just do a quick Kahoot. Can you guys see the code all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. If you guys are both in, I'll start it. If you guys can't see the question or anything, just let me know. I don't think it'll show up on your phone if you join on your phone or okay, we'll start it. Can I see everything all right? The question and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. And let me, does it end? Have you, if you guys have both answered, does it end automatically? So have you guys both answered?
It won't let
No,
me
it's
answer.
not. All I'm getting is like this. It's
Oh,
not.
okay. Okay.
Yeah,
My
that's what
bad.
it
I'm
is
sorry
on
about
my
that.
laptop.
Okay. Now
Okay.
we got it. Yeah. So those were the examples that were on the slides of a limited government. And then leaders have total control, citizens have fewer protections, and then stay in power through different means. This is the examples of what form of government. Yeah. So that's going to be the examples of unlimited government, so the authoritarian or absolute monarchies. And then all monarchies are unlimited governments. Yeah, it's false. There's going to be constitutional monarchies that are limited governments. And moving on, North Korea is an example of what type of government? Yep. It's going to have those characteristics we talked about, absolute power, stuff like that. Form of government where the people hold the power and elect representatives to create and enforce laws is an example of what type of government? Yeah, that's a good job. That's a republic, and that's going to be what we have in the United States, representative democracy. The United Kingdom is an example of what type of monarchy? Yeah, it's going to be a constitutional monarchy. So in the United Kingdom, they're going to have the king and queen, but they're going to be mostly ceremonial head. They're still going to have a constitution and democratically elected leaders that actually have the political influence. The United States is an example of a republic slash representative democracy. True or false? Yep, that's true. We're a republic and representative democracy. Um, Absolute monarchies are often authoritarian governments. True or false? Yeah, that's going to be true. Absolute monarchies, you're going to have leaders that aren't elected democratically. Their leaders are going to have different rights, and the citizens of their country aren't going to have as many guaranteed rights. So the characteristics of an authoritarian government. What is the most common way democracies are carried out? And sorry, this was supposed to say, oh no, this is right. Democracy is carried out. Yeah, republics is the most common way, like how we do in the United States, and how constitutional monarchies will do it. The most common example of direct democracy in the United States is a local initiative or referendum. True or false? Yeah, that's just what we talked about on that one question. And then good job, everyone. You guys did a great job there. And then just kind of to recap everything, we learned about the different government institutions that are used around the world. So democracies, republics, the two different types of monarchies, and then authoritarian and dictatorship governments. We learned why does it matter what government institutions are being used, so how it affects the people and uh, how the leaders act. And then how can we identify these forms of governments around the world? So like in the coup, we looked at certain characteristics and we were able to guess what type of government institution they used. And then any final questions, anyone? Anything we talk about? Okay, sounds good. Um, that's all I have.